Hey, you made it. This is our last video devotional in the March on the Mount series. Thanks for joining us. Let's see how Jesus closes out the Sermon on the Mount. We'll read in Matthew chapter 7, starting in verse 24. I want to break this up into three different parts. This is the parable of the wise and foolish builders. Verse 24, it says this: Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. You know, I've got this memory back from 2008. I went down with thousands of other campus students for an international campus ministry conference in the Baton Rouge area. And as part of that retreat, we went to the lower Ninth Ward to serve families and really just to serve the community who had been so severely affected by Hurricane Katrina. And something I remember very distinctly about that time is that there were certain lots where there used to be homes, but there was absolutely nothing left after the storm. I also remember seeing different concrete or stone foundations around the different lots that we were visiting. And I just thought, wow, after all of this destruction, after all of the storm, this foundation is still here. And it reminded me of this passage, because when we are building our life on Jesus and on his words that he's just spoken in this amazing sermon, well, then we're setting ourselves up for success. We're setting our life on a foundation that we know is going to be firm and is sure to stand up against the wind and the waves, the storms of this life. Let's keep reading here in verse 26. It says, But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Whoa, a great crash. You know, something's interesting to me about these two different people, the wise man and the foolish man. They both are building a house. In both circumstances, they've heard the words of Jesus. The wind and the rain, the streams rise. All of the same kind of difficult situation happens to both. The only difference is that one determined that they would not just listen, but they would listen and apply the words of Jesus to their life. For the foolish man, it's not that he didn't get a chance to hear. He did hear. Just like all of these people who are on the mount with Jesus, or around, listening to him in the field there. They heard the words of Jesus, but now Jesus is saying, hey, it's time to make a decision. Are you going to be like a wise man who takes these words that you've heard and puts them into practice? Or instead, are you going to be like a foolish man who hears and yet stays the same? You know, we get a great opportunity to make a decision, to put what we've heard in this series into practice in our life. Maybe it's the Beatitudes for you. Maybe it's really pursuing real holiness, not just looking the part, but actually at a heart level, connecting with God and going after him with all of your heart and your soul, your mind, your strength. Maybe for you it's even more specific and has something to do with what Jesus says about marriage or purity or relationships. You know, for you, you're going to have to decide, but what is the thing that you need to be putting into practice? You have an opportunity to be like a wise man, building his house on the rock. Let's close out here in verse 28. It says, When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teachers of the law. You know, Jesus had authority because he lived out what he was preaching. And you know, when we live out the words of Jesus, it will be amazing. It will be amazing for us and for our own lives, and we will become an amazing witness to Jesus, for his kingdom, for everyone around us. But it starts with us it starts and finishes with us being wise men and women who hear the words of Jesus and don't just listen to them, but actually put them into practice. I hope this series has been helpful for you, and let's be wise people who put his words into practice.